There are 18 parties in the conference. You will now be placed into the conference.
Uh, give some reasons for both groups. Those of you who already use Thor and PEM Editor, I hope you'll see some new stuff. Uh, somebody needs to mute their phone. And for those of you who are new, I'm hoping that you'll be able to see enough of PEM Editor to get you started in using it. In the amount of time that I have left, actually even if I had the whole meeting, regardless of how long Matt talked, I wouldn't be able to cover all the features of PEM Editor. So I'm going to skip along and show you some of the major stuff, and maybe as time comes, at another time I'll come back. When you start talking about a new application, the first thing you talk about is installation. And installation doesn't apply here because as part of Thor, it's PEM Editor and a large number of other tools are there automatically. They are installed and available for you. Once you have these things installed, Thor provides a large number of different ways that you can execute them. Now, sort of like FoxPro, you got a lot of different ways that you can do the same thing. Well, Thor is also like that. So I'm going to start by showing you the tool launcher. The tool launcher is the tool that I recommend for anybody who's starting with Thor or anybody who is a Thor user who wants to browse and find the capabilities that are in Thor that they're not taking advantage of, which actually includes me. I'm the one who knows or has known every single one of this long list of tools that are here, but the list is so long that I really can't remember all of them. I can remember that the tool exists, and what I will do is use this filter to type in a word, and it looks for the word as part of the name or part of the category. You could type in code, part of the description. I mean, it looks every place it can, and as an example of this, if I say browse, there's a tool called Super Browse, and when you click on the tool itself, you'll get a description of the tool. You'll get, this tool has a home page, and you can run the tool by clicking here. Oh, there's no table, so let's well, okay, if it's going to be nasty, we're going to ignore it then. Okay, starting with a good example of where it breaks. I love it. So let's go back into the tool launcher and show you instead a second way of running things. I'm going to go to PEM Editor. At least we know that that should be working. And when I click on PEM Editor here, I see it doesn't have a home page yet. It should. I don't know why it's not there. I must have missed that. A second way that you can run Thor tools is to assign a hotkey to it. And if I click on this little button here, it will let me assign a hotkey, which will always work regardless of whether the tool launcher is open or not. As long as you have the Thor menu up here, it will run for you. And a third way that you can run Thor tools, and this only applies to a few tools, is to say when you start Thor running, which presumably is when you start your FoxPro session. The design of Thor is that it's assumed that when you start your session, you say run Thor, and it creates some menus. You'll see a menu here that of my own personal tools that are not publicly available. And it will also run this tool automatically. So when I start my FoxPro session, PEM Editor comes up. So I've shown you three ways to run a tool. Actually, another way, which is really part of the same thing, is you can double-click on something here in the launcher, and that will also launch the tool. Okay. So you can see here that we have a class that is open, and here we have a list of properties in the properties and methods. Well, let's turn this on here. This is now showing all properties, methods, and events. I guess I can start by showing you that. Okay. Okay, somebody needs to mute their phone. We're getting a lot of interference here. This grid here, which, and I'm gonna make it a little bit wider here for the time being here, shows a lot of. It has a number of different columns, and we can sort on the columns. We can sort it alphabetically. Can't sort by value. Can sort by whether it's non-default or not. We can sort by having all the properties on the top, and et cetera, and then events and methods down. Okay. You can also. Hello?
Hello?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay,
Hello?
I'm getting feedback. Is anybody else hearing the feedback?
When you were talking, it sounds like whoever had an open speaker took care of it there.
Okay. This grid here, you can select by these checkboxes. You can select which rows you actually want to see for for what's going on right here for this class. So we could, for instance, we could say we only want properties and we only want to see custom properties. Or we could say only non-default custom properties. And when we're done, we can reset this back to its default. Now, my default is not the default that you might expect yourself. I only look at properties in this particular list because there's another view here that we can look at, and then these are all my methods. So I can switch back and forth. Here's properties, and when this method view is turned on, it will show methods. Something else that you can filter on is you can say I can type in part of a name. So if I typed in color, it would find me the properties. In this case, I'm only looking at properties, so it would find you all the properties that say color. And there's also a group here where these are the same groupings as you can see in the property window. So that gives you some idea of what the layout here is. Now, we started off by saying, let's just show you some custom properties here. In edit property, I'm not sure what the name is anymore. In edit property method, which was the tool that this all started from, what you can do is you can change the name of a property. So in this case, it's explanation, and I can say explanation mark, and then you can save that, and you'll see that it's updated here in our grid. I'm not going to show you, but if you had the property window open at the same time, you would see it's updated there as well. Note that when you do this, the name that I typed in was a mixture of upper and lower case, and it takes that name and maintains it and updates member data for you. One of the things that PEM Editor does for you is it maintains member data and actually does a good job of compressing it so that it doesn't get to be very big. So that is really the same feature as you can get from the edit property and method. Now you can also add properties. I'm going to add one called CName, I guess. And when I do, it already exists. Okay, CName 2. Okay, here's CName 2. And when I created this property, it assigned it a value. And the value it assigned was a character because of the lowercase c. You may not actually, that may not be the way that you do things, so you can go to this preference screen here. And I'm actually going to show you a couple of things from the preference screen. One is there's a checkbox here that says assigning default values to new properties. That's checked for me because I use C and whatever, L for logical. If you don't want to do that, you can turn this off and it will always be false. And actually, there are plugins as well. I'll get to those in just a second. The other thing I wanted to show you is that the PEM Editor has the grid on the left and the rest of these properties, which are all in one container, on the right. You can choose to do it a different way. which looks like that. And then you can make this dockable. You can take the whole form and you can dock it with other forms, and this orientation, this more vertical orientation, works better for docking if you are interested in doing it that way. So, so I've shown you that you can add a property. I'm going to add another one called and number. Number, yeah, great. It says a value of 0, but I can type in some other value. I can create access or assign methods. I can add it to our locals, our favorites, either the local favorites, which are in member data in the current form, or global, which are saved in the Fox code file. So if you have properties like caption and control source and other things that you want, it will maintain them in your Fox code file for you. And we'll make this one local. And for classes, you can also control the visibility, and then you can save it. And interestingly enough, you can also go back and say, well, this thing here, I'm going to change its name. Well, you know that you can change its name. You can also change it if you've just created it as a property. Oh, I really meant that to be a method. Now, it doesn't show up in my grid here. It doesn't show up in my grid because my grid is not showing methods or events. Okay? So, so I've shown you that you can add properties, you can add methods. You can actually go back and you can change them, but much like you do in the, let's just do properties here for a second. You can change the values. We can go here and we can, I should explain that here. You can change the value down here and click on Save. Or if you double click, you get a pop-up. This is the way I edit all my properties. I double click on them and save the values that way. There are some niceties here. This particular property here is already logical. I think you're aware that if you have native properties, let's get some native properties. If you have a native property here, and you double click on a native property, it toggles it. And if we get rid of them and just say custom properties, and double click on this, it will toggle it as well. We go into methods. If we double click on a method here, it opens it. And if we control click on a method, it opens it. It's not, it doesn't look like it did before because it doesn't have the stuff up on top. Because this is actually a read-only thing which shows you, it shows you the inheritance, okay? In some parent class somewhere, there's this code in the inherited form. So this allows you for any particular, if we look, for instance, at the activate event here, if we control click on it, this will show us where the actual code for activate, the actual code that is in some parent class. So let's add a method and show you something else. We're going to say new method. Boy, spelling not so good today. And something else that you can do when you create a new method is you can save it, and then it will open up the method code automatically. So you can go directly to editing without having to go through additional steps. Now, one of the things about all these features that I've been showing you is that people have their own peculiarities about the way they work, and so what they'd like to do is have plugins which can change the basic behavior. So if I go back into Thor, into my launcher, and you can say plugin, plug right here, and there is a tool Incidentally, I think one of the main things I'm hoping that um, everybody learns from this, even if they don't remember all of the details about that I'm showing you of working with the PEM Editor form, is that you can find tools. There are a lot of tools. There's over 100 of them. You can find them quite quickly in the tool launcher. Okay, so here's a tool called Manage Plugins, which I'll double click, and um, you have to sort of wade through this and find the one you're looking for. When you create a new method, you can, if you choose, create a plugin. Here's a plugin that somebody supplied me. Each of these plugins has sample code, and this sample code looks like it writes the method name and purpose and author and everything else. And then that is, every time PEM Editor creates a new method, this information will be put at the beginning of the method code for you. And the way this works, the way all the things, this is actually part of 4, is when it opens this PRG for you, you modify it and then just press Control W and it saves it in the right place where it can find it. And if you do what I'm going to do, you press Escape. If I discard changes, it hasn't changed anything. So you can see that I have a couple of plugins. There are more here. You could scroll down. There are a couple of plugins that I have used myself and others that I don't use. There's a question about integrate with frameworks with no big issues. I'm not aware of any issues with frameworks. There's nothing particular going on with PEM Editor. It's using all standard FoxPro methods and events. I mean, it uses all the things that if it breaks, then FoxPro is breaking. So let's close this, and Matt has joined on the phone, even though he's not watching anymore. Now the next thing I can show you is that you notice that this says class history. That's the class tag history, and like the property window, when you change from one object to another, this form will, the PEM Editor form, will get updated with that object. So yeah, I'm going to go back to where I see, well, reset filters. Here's my filters. One of the things that can happen is if you work with these filters, you can get to the point where nothing shows up because of your selection, which is why you always want to be able to reset. This this here, the form is now working much like the way that the property window works. So you can switch from object to object, and it will let you see the properties and methods. And what I typically do, I use this find filter all the time. It's not always true that control source ends up on top, but if I do that, I type in a couple letters, it will certainly move to the top. And then when I double click on it, I get a drop down. Now, one of the other VFPX projects that I have is IntelliSense X, and this is an example of IntelliSense X. If I type in this form, dot, it gives me a drop down, or a drop up list in this case, which is all the custom properties on this form, and lets me choose from them like you would expect. This is not something you get from the property window. And actually, if I type in N, and then when I say OK, it says, you want to create a new property? It does so. So I'm able to set the control source and create a new property at one and the same time. This will also work with, let's see here. Let's see if this is going to work here. Parts list. There we go. You can also do it with the table. Okay. And as you type, you can actually type in just part of the name if you want. So for instance, I know that there are some things called code, and I type in code, and it'll choose UPC code for me. Um, let's reset our filters again. I use this reset filters quite frequently. Something else that you can do is you can select, you can highlight a whole bunch of objects, and they will show up in the form much the way that they show up in the property window. At least it appears that way until you look at it, because what actually happens here is in the property window, you only get the properties or events and methods that exist for every single one of the objects. And here you get the list that applies to any of the objects. So you know, for instance, that these combo boxes don't have a caption. But actually, if you change the caption, you would change the caption for all of those that had captions. Or you can control click. Can you see that? Can somebody tell me if you can see that pop up, the form?
Yep.
Okay, good. So this form shows, here's the name of the different objects that I have selected. Here's their caption. This is a tool in itself that's available from Thor. You can add, I can add base class to it, so I can tell what the base class is. I can save the column settings, and what's really interesting is you can go into this and you can change these things. I can change the captions one at a time. So you can select a bunch of objects. This may not be the list of captions that you would choose, but it certainly demonstrates that you can make these choices. Okay, I use this very frequently for changing captions and control sources. So let's, wow. Okay, I'm going to move along to two more things. Let's see here. Okay, I'm going to show you something. I'm going to talk about dopes. Dopes are property editors that are in descriptions. And you'll notice, for instance, you'll see this. This is in Foxcharts. This is my subclass of Foxcharts. And you'll notice that there's this axis color here, which is represented as 3 numbers. But this is the actual number. Oops, and we're going to go up. And what PEM Editor allows you to do is you can put a text into the description of a property. If it begins at 3 stars, 3 stars is a special marker that this is something called a dope. And there are a number of dopes. There are either 6 or 7, but there are only a couple that are frequently used. When you say something is a color, it will appear in the PEM Editor display the way colors display, and it also knows that when you double-click, you'll get the color pop-up for you. Now, a more interesting one, as far as I'm concerned, is this one. I'm going to make this a little bigger. This one is called Brush Type, and when I double-click on this one, first of all, you'll note this display lists that can be done for native properties. So row source type or those things where you have a particular list. If we double-click on this list, remember this is a custom property. This list pops up with the list of values. It gives you the text, but it actually saves the value of 2. And if you can look in, I'm not sure how well you can see this. Here's the 3 stars again. And then what we have is the list of values separated by semicolons. So I can add, if I add a new property, 99, okay, now when I save this, oh, well, I didn't give it a value. Okay, it says 99.00. I'm not sure about representation of the zeros, but basically this allows you to, here's another one that's like this. Oh, I see. It didn't, I needed to say it was numeric, but that's a different issue. So you can create these little list boxes basically where, and it can be either character data or numeric data that you can create is for drop-down lists. And then you can you can have both values that are specific for what you need, but also text to remind you of what their things are. And these are as this stuff is inherited from parent classes. It's not just in this class, but it gets inherited from parent classes as well. So there's one last thing I'm going to show you, and actually there's two last things I'm going to show you. I'm lying. What I haven't mentioned is the PEM Editor form. One of the goals that I've had throughout the whole PEM Editor working on this is that the information in it should be as discoverable as possible. I don't like to have things that you have in your form or in a class where you know that there's some magic somehow, but you can't find it. So as much as possible, things are available here, and one of the things that I haven't shown you is to right-click. When you right-click, there is a right-click on this particular combo box. There's also a right-click on any single one of the rows in the grid, and what is displayed, the list, it really is context sensitive. It's really sensitive to what type, whether it's a property or method event, whether it's custom or not, and everything else. So one of the things here is, watch what's going to happen. This is a form, right, that I'm working with. I'm not executing the form. I'm in design mode, but when I stretch the form, all the objects in the form respond based upon the values of their anchor properties. Okay, so you can see this guy here moves, and this guy moves, and the grid moves, and it works on all of the pages too. This grid worked. So it really is acting as if the anchor properties are being evaluated. There's a caveat. It only works for values from 0 through 15. 0 through 15 are the standard properties of, it's anchored on the left or above or whatever. All the ones that are sort of proportional, there's proportional ones. It's not possible, at least I don't know how to implement those. So, and that you control. Now, of course, you don't always want it to work, so you can turn it off. Ooh, let's see here. Where did my okay, I want to know where my oh, there it is, event handlers. If I turn my event handlers off, I was looking in the wrong place. Then it doesn't work. It only works in the case when you have turned on event handlers. And one last thing, now I really do mean the last thing this time. This is a simple little container. Did I leave them on? Yeah. Here's a simple little container, and watch what happens. I'm going to click on it here, and I'm going to change the width. You notice that the text box inside moved at the same time. It changed its width at the same time. And if I click inside on the text box and move the text box, the prompt in front of it moves at the same time. These are things, examples of design time event handlers, and you can do some neat little tricks like this which keep things in sync. I'd love to be able to come back and give you a talk another time on that. I think that you'd find it quite interesting as well. I'm going to go back to this thing here. One other thing is when you have right-aligned text boxes, if I change the caption, It will keep right aligned. Oh, I'm sorry. Let's make it bigger. It knows when you have a right align checkbox that if you make it bigger than it was before, it's still going to be right aligned in the same place. The same is also true for right aligned captions of labels as well. This is probably a little funny place to stop for this. I think that I've given you a pretty good overview of the major capabilities of PEM Editor. What I'd like to do is show you one last thing, and that is from Thor, there are 4 forums that are accessible. Now, Matt talked to you about dynamic forms. If you click here, it'll take you right to the home page, and you can send messages. This is the desired place to contact. I'm going to say for me, but it's also true for Matt. You guys might not know this, but Matt and I have been working together for 4 years. We started on PEM Editor together in October of 2008. So we've been very close for a long time. And Thor is mine, Dynamic Forums, and Go Fish are his forums. And I encourage you all, there is no question that is too stupid to ask in the forum. I think everybody who sends a message, I hope that I can help you get to the point where you can feel productive and take advantage of PEM Editor. Not only PEM Editor, but also all the other tools that are available in Thor. So with that, I think I have completed my little tour. Thank you very much. Are there any questions? Which I really haven't left much time for questions.
No questions from anybody? All right. Thanks, Jim.
Okay.
I guess that wraps up our first inaugural meeting. Things like it went fairly well. Minor technical issue or two for us to work on next month. If you got comments, something comes up afterwards, go ahead and ask on the Fox Pro user group, Google group. I think you're all on there if you found your way here. We'll be looking for speakers for next month, December 18th again next month, third Tuesday. I'll probably start asking for speakers on the list here shortly, right after Thanksgiving. We do have to pay for join.me. It's pretty minor. It's $20 a month or $25 a month, I forget. So you may see a notice about a virtual hat being passed to take up a collection to pay for that. We'll see. I can't think of anything else. Jim, anything to finish with?
Not for me, no. I was proud to be able to do this, and I'm looking forward to the meeting again next month.